After I graduated business school, I decided I wanted to take a year off and learn Gemara, Talmud, in memory of a dear 12-year-old cousin of mine that passed away from cancer. So I came back here to Yeshiva University to learn Gemara. And while I was here, I had a conversation with the dean of the business school where I was raving about the case study method that I had just learned at the Harvard Business School. A couple of days later, he approached me and asked me if I would teach a course that revolved around the case study method. And I agreed. I taught a class, and I loved it. I knew I wanted to come back and teach, but at the same time, I knew I had to get on with my business career. So after 20 years in the workforce, which included various roles such as investment banker and Fortune 50 senior executive, I was blessed to have the opportunity to come back here to Yeshiva University. And recently, I took a step back and I wondered, what was the difference in the way I taught 20 years ago with the way that I teach today? And what brought about those changes? And what I realized was being an executive has given me the tools to enhance my navigation system, which has made me a better professor and, more importantly, a better person. And so tonight, I'd like to share with you just a few of the elements of my navigation system. Element number one, it's not just about me. We all understand what this icon says, what it means. It tells you where you are. But does it really? I think this icon tells you absolutely nothing. It's not until you understand everything else around you. It's not until you have a map, and then you place that icon on the map, do you realize where you are and what you need to do to get to where you want to go. It's not just about me. I remember sitting in the conference room of an executive at Medco Health 12 years ago, getting ready to listen to the summer interns make their summer intern project, their presentation. And Debbie, a summer intern, got up to speak. And as she got up to speak and started her presentation, I noticed that all of my colleagues had tuned out. I noticed that they weren't paying attention. Debbie, unaware of what was going on around her, continued on with her goal of completing the presentation. Debbie was so focused on her goal that she failed to realize the true goal was to make sure that she engaged senior management in a conversation related to a topic that she had just spent the last 6 weeks researching. What Debbie did was not uncommon. Too often, when we are so focused on our own goal, when we are so focused on ourselves, we fail to understand everything around us. We fail to look at things from the perspective of others. Unlike 20 years ago, when I enter the classroom, it's not about me. It's not about teaching the information that I want to teach. It's about making sure the students understand. It's about making sure the students have a learning experience. And if I see a blank face after a blank face, it's up to me to find a way to teach them, even if I have to rip up the material that I worked so hard to present. Element number one, it's not just about me. Element number two, define success. In today's day and age, most of the time we don't define success. And when we do define success, we focus on the short term and we lose sight of the journey. We focus on our next destination and not the long term. I remember getting ready for a multi-billion-dollar negotiation with a national retailer, sitting with my team, preparing for the negotiation. And they laid out all of the issues that we were currently facing and what we were going to do to solve those problems. I then turned to the team and asked them, how are we defining success? This is a multi-year agreement, 3 to 5 years. What are the problems that we see in 3 and 5 years, and what can we do to solve those problems? And my team understood. Fortunately for us, the other side defined success based on the short term, and they were happy with the negotiation. We, on the other hand, focused on the long term. We maximized the true value of the contract. Unlike 20 years ago, when I enter the classroom, my metric of success is not solely based on making sure the students understand the basic principles of leadership and management. I want to make sure the students enhance their ability to think on their feet, to make decisions with imperfect data, and enhance their emotional intelligence. My metric of success is not solely based on what they know at the end of the semester. My metric of success is long-term. In 10 years from now, how many students will look back and say, my class made a difference in their leadership style. My class made a difference in their professional or their personal lives. Define success. Element number 3, embrace feedback. GPS utilizes trilateration to pinpoint your exact location. Trilateration is the use of a minimum of 3 to 4 satellites to provide feedback. We too need to embrace feedback. We need to embrace positive and negative feedback. Early on in my career, I hated feedback. Who really wants to hear when you're not doing something well? I know I didn't. After I graduated Yeshiva University, I worked at Coopers and Lybrand. And in one of my first performance reviews, Fess, my supervisor, started to go through all of the things that I had done well that year. And then he started to go through the things that he felt I didn't do so well. And he kept on going and going. And in my mind, I remember thinking, do I deserve to be getting criticized, to be getting ripped apart? I left that business review seething. And then I caught myself and realized that just a few years earlier, I loved feedback. I embraced feedback. In high school, I was a gymnast. I trained at the Wooden Center. I spent hours and hours every week at the Wooden Center with my coach, Yefim, a silver medalist, as well as other members of the 1984 gold medal USA gymnastics team. And as a gymnast, the second I was done with the routine, I would search out feedback from my coach or other members in the gym. In the Wooden Center, you embraced feedback. As an athlete, you realized that feedback was how you grew and feedback was how you improved. And just then I realized that Fess wasn't telling me that I was failing. Fess was telling me that he wanted me to improve and that he believed that I can improve. And from that point on, I was fascinated with the concept of feedback. And as I continued my journey and became an executive, I realized that any time I encountered feedback, I wanted to think about it from the mind frame of an athlete, from the mind frame of a gymnast, and realized there were 3 things I needed to work on. 1, I needed to create an environment that was feedback friendly. 2, I needed to find a way to give feedback. And 3, I needed to find a way to use feedback. So what can one do to mimic the environment of the Wooden Center? Supervisors tell their employees, embrace feedback. Friends tell colleagues, embrace feedback. But the person that needs feedback most is the one that runs furthest away from it. So as an executive, what I would do is I would reach out to those individuals and I would ask them for feedback on me for 2 reasons. 1, I wanted to hear what they had to say. But more importantly, I wanted them to engage with me on a conversation that revolved around feedback in a non-threatening way where I was the topic of conversation. And then I can turn the tables and give them feedback. But what can you do to give feedback like my coach Yefim? The key issue, the key point is to make sure that when you're giving feedback, they understand that you're giving them prospective guidance and not retrospective criticism. They need to understand that you want them to improve and that you believe they can improve. And most importantly, they need to understand that you want to be their coach. Using feedback. And this is where most people fail. When you get feedback, I would always work on coming up with an action plan. An action plan that shows the person giving me the feedback that I heard what they had to say, and most importantly, that I was going to do something about it. 20 years ago, I was more than happy with the 2-minute feedback that students gave me at the end of the semester. I really wasn't interested in hearing more. Today, I actively and openly embrace feedback during the semester and at the end of the semester. Students are required to submit a minimum 5-page critique. And after reading over 100 pages of critique, sometimes quite painful, I develop my own action plan. And I send it to all my students. I let my students know I heard what they had to say and what I'm going to do to improve. This teaches students the importance of feedback, but it also helps because then when I want to give them feedback at the end of the semester, they embrace it. We all need to embrace feedback, whether personal, professional, or in school. I'm blessed to be the father of 4 amazing children. And early on as a father, there would be numerous times where a child of mine would come home and talk to me about a problem or a situation that frustrated them. And being an action-oriented person, the first thing I would do would be suggest a solution or try to figure out what else they could have done to have avoided the situation. And undoubtedly, the conversation would always deteriorate. So I turned to my wife, my best source of feedback, and what she told me was, sometimes when our kids come to you, they just want to vent. And sometimes they just want empathy. And sometimes when they come to you, they want you to put yourself in their perspective, to think of things from their perspective and not from yours. And what was she telling me? Element number 1, it's not just about me. And fortunately for me, I embraced that feedback and have enhanced my relationship with my children. Feedback is essential. Feedback helps you know exactly where you are. We all will make mistakes in life. We all will hit roadblocks. If it's the end of a journey, then we've failed. With strength, courage, resilience, and feedback, we will be able to reroute and continue on with our journey. 20 years ago, I remember driving home after teaching a class that I didn't feel went so well. And when I came home, I told my wife, this teaching stuff is not for me. A similar thing happened just last semester with a different outcome. I came to Stern to teach my honors class in entrepreneurial leadership, a group of students that always came to class prepared, engaged, and ready for a great dialogue. And as I started teaching the case, I realized I saw blank face after blank face after blank face. And so I hit the pause button, and I tried to find a different way to teach my students. But I don't think I did a good job. And I got frustrated. I got frustrated because I felt the students didn't put the time into reading the case and preparing for the conversation. So after class, I asked a couple of students for feedback, and what I found out surprised me. The students had in fact read the case, but unfortunately the case was not well written, and the homework that I gave confused them even more. So as I was driving home, I realized I had 2 options. I could do nothing, or I can do something about it. Do nothing, sweep it under the rug, pretend like it never happened, or do something to create a learning environment. So when I got home, I sent a long email to my students. And the email included the following: I strive for every class to be a learning experience, and tonight I failed. But let's not fail to learn from tonight. When you make a mistake, not if you make a mistake, don't hide from it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Be accountable. Find a way to learn from it and find a way to grow stronger. Tonight, I failed to teach you the lesson that I initially sought out to teach, but maybe the lesson on accountability was far more important. Looking forward to a better class next week. Sincerely, Professor Kornwasser. So what have we learned other than 20 years ago? I probably wasn't a good professor. You learned a few of the elements of my navigation system. 1, it's not just about me. 2, define success. Trilateration. We all need numerous sources of feedback as a source of growth and a way to improve. And finally, recalculate. As we continue on with our journey, whether it's personal or professional, unexpected detours are inevitable. Find a way to engage your own personal navigation system to recalculate and stay focused on your journey to success. Please share with me your feedback by emailing me at feedbackisawesome@gmail.com. Thank you.